All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
Welcome to a special episode of the Next Level Guy podcast. It's a brand new series of Let's Talk About. This is a series where we have real, unfiltered conversations about the stuff that matters. Whether it's grief, stigma, masculinity, mental health or self-worth or anything else, we're going to talk about it. It's all about things that matter to men today. We're looking at things not to shock, not to shame, but to understand and grow. Because when we talk about it, we take away its power. So let's get into today's conversation. And today's topic, let's talk about being seen for who we are, not just how we look. We're all more than what people see. So stop staring, start asking, and actually see the person in front of you. That's a quote from today's guest, Oliver Bromley. If somebody met you today, what would they notice about you first? Would it be your face, your energy, or your story? Too often in today's society, we're taught to judge with our eyes before we ever engage with our hearts. We make snap assumptions based on appearance and forget to ask, who is this person? What is their story? What have they survived? What have they built? What makes them so unique? Would I like to get to know this person? We judge on appearance well before we know the person. And this episode is about unlearning that reflex. It's about seeing the person, not just the diagnosis. It's seeing the journey, not just the scars, lumps or labels. It's about seeing the strength, not just what stands out. Today's guest is Oliver Bromley. Oliver is a mental health worker, a speaker, an advocate, and a visible difference campaigner who lives with neurofibromatosis type 1, otherwise known as NF1. It's a genetic condition that causes non-cancerous tumours on the nerves. He was asked to leave a restaurant because of how he looked, and now he's teaching the world how to see better. He was born in South Africa and now based in the UK. Oliver has endured countless surgeries, faced misunderstanding and prejudice, even been asked to leave a restaurant simply because of how he looked. But this isn't a story about pity, this is a story about purpose. With humour, honesty and heart, Oliver opens up about growing up with NF1, building self-acceptance and turning pain into a mission. He's helping others see the humanity beyond the surface. He reminds us that kindness isn't optional, that masculinity can mean vulnerability, and that we all have a role to play in making the world more inclusive. If you've ever felt different, misunderstood or judged, this is a conversation for you. If this episode speaks to you, tag Next Level Guy Podcast and share your biggest takeaway. And now, let's get to the interview. I've written an introduction for us. Now, let me know what you think of this. Now, today in society, we focus too much on appearance. If someone met us for the first time today, what would they notice about you? Not just physically, but by spirit. Too often society teaches us to judge with our eyes before we engage with our hearts. We make snap decisions based on appearance and forget to ask, who is the person really? What have they overcome, created, contributed and given to the world? And today I want to challenge that instinct. I want to see the person first, not just the condition, not just the look. Because the guest you're about to meet is so much more than you notice. He lives with a visible difference, but so do we all. He's also a husband, an advocate, a TikTok creator, a lover of musicals, which we will get into, and someone who's turned pain into purpose in a way that will stay with you long after this episode ends. His name is Oliver, and this is a conversation about difference, resilience, and humanity, and about why we all deserve to be seen for who we are, not just how we look. And he's a grade A, lovely guy as well. How would you introduce yourself?
Hi, and thank you for having me. I would introduce myself as Oliver, that South African guy, a lover of the outdoors, a lover of people. And people often say, well, you're very confident for somebody with a disability. Spend 5 seconds with me, and they look past the visible difference. And I connect with people on a human level, and I understand people. I have empathy because what I have gone through, and I love encouraging others through my stories and through learning about their own struggles and trials and suffering. And that's how I would describe myself and how others would describe me.
I mean, you're a lovely guy. I mean, I found you initially on your TikTok live, and 2 minutes in, I was like, this guy's just, I would go happily sit for a pint with you, go fishing with you. You have this natural warmth about you. But you also have a beautiful way of explaining your condition to other people, and describing the kind of incidents that you've had, and trying to advocate for just treating people as a person, not as people see the condition. But for people who maybe don't understand NF1, could you explain it how would you explain it to them so they could understand what it is and what happens to you?
So, firstly, neurofibromatosis. It's a long word. It's a rare illness. It's apparently, the doctors say it's a common rare illness, but I always say, if it's so common, why has nobody heard about it? Why can nobody spell it or indeed say it? Anyway, it's a genetic condition. It's in 2 types. I have type 1, others have type 2, and it's inherited from a parent in my case. And neurofibromatosis is mainly characterized by the presentation of subcutaneous small tumors which occur at the nerve endings. People with neurofibromatosis have a faulty gene. Chromosome 17 is faulty. It's almost like an error code in the genes. And people like me lack a substance called neurofibromin, which is a cell regulator, and it, in most people, controls tumor growths. However, with people like me, we don't have neurofibromin, and these tumors occur everywhere, wherever there is a nerve ending. That is neurofibromatosis in short.
And that's the thing that we don't really see. We see the person as is, but we don't really know their story. We don't know your character or what happened to you. What was it like growing up? Because on your live, you talked about how your family normalized living with it. I mean, I've got, I don't know if you can see that, like I've got keloid lumps, which are like overproduction of collagen in my body. And the doctors were stumped because they said to me, like, I have them on my hips, shoulders, arms, all over. And I know people who have said, oh, they make me feel sick. And it's like, I can't do anything with it. How did you find that with growing up? Because you were saying in your life that it wasn't really well known at the time and your family normalized it. How did you find...
Well, it's a great question. It's still not that well known.
Yeah.
When I grew up in South Africa in a beautifully hot country, and I would love to have just sat by a pool and taken my shirt off like the other children. But because I had the tumors, I was very self-conscious, self-aware, and I, in the main, hid away from a lot of my peer group. However, my family normalized it. They didn't treat me any different, and they helped me to feel normal and offered me a great deal of encouragement and support and love throughout my life. So I never felt different when I was around them.
Yeah.
But in the sports field and in the school playground and at the swimming pool and in social settings, I felt terribly different. And it did inform my self-confidence at the time and my self-image. And it made me very self-aware that I was different. And it was only in later years that I've learned to just love myself for who I am, accept myself, and to try and overcome some of those obstacles. But it took a long time to learn those hard lessons.
I mean, that is beautiful to hear that, because a lot of us who grow up with differences or perceived differences, we kind of beat ourselves up. We hate ourselves. We can talk negatively to ourselves, and to come to peace with that. How did you find the traditional healing modalities? Because when I went to the hospital, the guy said, "Oh, white people generally don't get keloids, which are like benign tumors. They tend to be like an African American disease. It's typically black people that get it." And I was put on a list of unusual conditions, so the hospital would phone me up and ask, could I come and show it to medical students? It was kind of like, oh. And it took forever to find. I tried like Roaccutane and all these kind of drugs, and they made me suicidal. They made me feel horrible. Eventually, I found limecycline. It worked for me, for my condition. It's slowly working, months and months and months, years on it. But on your live, you had people hawking Ivermectin. They were talking about herbal treatments. You said about how the doctors didn't really help when you were younger. How did you find that with your family getting treatments and prioritization of your health when you were younger?
So if I thought it was rare in the UK, so in the UK it affects 1 in 2,500 people. In South Africa it was even more rare. Other than my father and my brother, I didn't really meet anyone else with it. And I call those people that you refer to the lotions and potions brigade. Everybody's got a suggestion for a treatment, but there's no cure for neurofibromatosis. There's lots of research being done into future treatment options. However, the only current treatment option is a surgical one if the tumors get too big. There's no medication available. And in South Africa, we have a private healthcare system, so it's incredibly expensive to seek out the specialist surgeons. So when the tumors got really big, such as the one on my face and eye, I did see doctors, and but even them, they didn't know much about neurofibromatosis because there weren't enough examples of it in a population size such as that of South Africa for them to specialize in it. Very fortunately, in the UK, we have specialist centres, but those weren't available to me in South Africa.
And so when you inherited it from your father, and you said it affected your brother as well, how did they find that? Like, was it kind of helpful in a way to see another family member with it, and you could relate to what happened with each other? Did they kind of have any issues with your dad? Because did they feel guilty about passing it on, the genes?
I don't think there was any guilt. We always accepted that one day we might have it. It's a good thing and a bad thing to have a parent with it, because on the one hand it helps to manage your expectations, because you know that at the very least you will be like your father, and it may not be worse than you think it, and it might even be better. So it helps to manage those expectations. And you will know that in the early 80s, we didn't even know much about DNA. The Human Genome Project hadn't even been completed, so we didn't even know at that time where neurofibromatosis occurred within the genomes. Now it's chromosome 17. We now know that, but in the early 80s, very little was known. So it was a great challenge, certainly to them. But I don't think my parents ever felt guilty. People with it know that you have a 50% chance of passing it on to a child, and I think they knew the risks, and they were very blessed to have my brother and I, and we've never held that against them, certainly not. But it's a great question, and I think some parents probably do battle with guilt, but certainly not mine.
I've got friends who have kids with Down syndrome and things like that, and they've often wondered and felt guilty that they might have passed the gene on. And I thought, you love the kid for the character, for the person. You don't love it for the genetic makeup. It takes a bit of you, and a bit of history in the world about you to shape you. And I think that's beautifully put, that your father and you loved each other for the relationship you had, not for the health history. How does it affect you on a daily basis, so physically, emotional? When my keloids, for example, I have an itch sometimes where I can't scratch it because it's inside the nerve ending. How do you find living with that? Because do you find it affects you in a certain way? Does it make you angry? Does it make you happy? Because you do amazing advocacy work, But when you're being Oliver the badass, sitting with your cup of tea and your feet up with your slippers on, etc., how do you deal with it on a daily basis?
I think I've largely dealt with the mental health side of it. Of course, there are days, I'm only human, where I feel down and I feel a bit low, but that's everybody. For me, the physical symptoms are low energy. So people with neurofibromatosis really struggle with tiredness and really incredibly itchy skin at times. But these are all things we can do something about. We can eat healthily. We can make sure we exercise. So chronic fatigue is something I am struggling with at the moment. But in terms of my mental health, I think I've moved on from that. And I use a lot of mindfulness, just being present in the moment. I tell myself we can't change tomorrow. Let's just deal with today, and that helps me get through every day. So those are very key beliefs that I have and that I hold on to. And of course, my faith. I'm very grounded in my Christian faith and the love and support of my family. So these are some of the things that help to mitigate those more harsher bits of having neurofibromatosis.
I love that because it's something we don't think about. We see a perceived difference, like somebody with an amputation or whatever it is, and we think, oh, they must have a horrible life, they must be this and that. But we don't know anything about the person, the situation, and a lot of times we talk out our arses because we don't know the person or the love, the support, the family, the warmth that they have in their life. We perceive them on the appearance, and society is, well, fucked in that sense. We care too much about likes and looks and that at the moment. But did you use your faith and like visualization and mindfulness, etc., while you were doing the surgeries when you were younger? Did that help you get through it, or was it just your family treating you like Oliver?
No, it did help me. I had a very supportive church community, so they would remind me of those things that we needed to hold on to. Family loved and supported me, so I didn't know I didn't know at the time that I was actively mindful of those belief systems, but I now can reflect back and say, yes, they got me through it, absolutely. And I wouldn't be the person that I am today without them. And I think now I can make a more conscious decision to be aware and present that these are the things I need to put into practice if I'm going to cope and if I'm going to get through life. So I do now have little mantras that I say to myself and that I repeat and that and verses from the Bible that I hold on to, whatever it is. I'm now more conscious and more present when it comes to those issues.
I love the strength and character that you have and the fact that you've taken a condition and you've said, yeah, this is me. I'm going to go and be the figure point for people who are going to be treated differently because how they look, or I'm going to be the person that goes and fights for better medical rights, for better treatment for people, for being treated like we are as people, not our conditions. How do you find that now, dealing with doing the lives, being the figure point, doing the news, the radio shows, etc.? How do you keep that strength and not let the bitterness grow when you get the side looks, the comments? Because you're such a lovely guy, especially on the lives. We all fall in love with you. But how do you not let that get to you?
I don't, because I have told myself, and I don't know where I got this from, but it's a bit of a mantra of mine, that what other people think about me is none of my business. And when we know better, we do it better. So people are acting from a place of ignorance. And I've now developed the ability to screenshot some of those hateful comments. And sometimes I redact their names, sometimes I don't. And I turn those into teaching moments. Now, I don't name and shame those people for retribution, but I just try and show the world what it's like to be me, what it's like to be visibly different, and what some of the members of my community deal with on a daily basis. So I think those comments are actually a really good thing because they help to educate and they help to shine a light on neurofibromatosis and the wider visible difference community. So it's about turning really hard times into good teaching moments.
I love that way of looking at it. There's that kind of thing of, I'm going to take a condition which might crumble some, but I'm going to actually show them how it should be done. Because you talk about stigma, about how it's the importance of asking, not staring. what's the distinction between that? Why should we teach kids? Because when we were younger, we were told not to stare. But now I like that approach of asking. But you must get to a point where you're fed up of people coming and asking, and you just want your own peace and go about your day. How do you want people to come to you?
I think any relationship, any communication that you have with somebody, you need to develop rapport first. I don't go up to somebody in Morrison's near to where I live, and I don't approach somebody in a wheelchair and I say, well, how did you get into the wheelchair? I don't think that's appropriate. I think as society, we've largely forgotten how to communicate. We've got direct messages, we've got instant messages, but we've lost the art of conversation and communication. So let's develop relationships and friendships first, and then we can answer the harder questions. However, that said, if somebody is curious and I see they're a good person, I don't mind them being inquisitive and asking me. What I do resent and mind, however, on some occasions is if I'm very tired at the end of the day and I'm in a supermarket and I'm stressed out, as are most people in the supermarket, I don't like to be reminded that I look different. I'm only human. I like my anonymity too. So it depends how I am feeling on a specific day. But largely, I'm learning to engage more and to answer those questions because I now realize that I'm not only speaking for me, but I'm speaking up for the community of people that I represent. So it's a good practice to be prepared to answer some of those harder questions.
Because I think that's what we forget into is that we assume that, we can ask you, because generally this nosiness now we all have that, it's like you're saying, everything Google's at our fingertips. We can find out whatever we need, but we do get to a point where we forget it's the person. They might be having a shitty day, they might be upset, they might be had bad news, and we expect to just go, what's wrong with you? And people to explain. And we're so used to just no boundaries now that we have to put the healthy boundaries in. And I think you're right. We've forgotten how to not be arseholes, but arseholes basically. Because you kind of really started getting into the advocacy when you were asked to leave a restaurant. Can you walk us through that? I mean, I know you're probably sick of talking about it now, but how did that shape?
I don't mind. So people with neurofibromatosis have many episodes of care, hundreds of hospital appointments, multiple surgeries, too many that I care to remember. About 2.5 years ago now, I was a patient at King's College Hospital for some brain surgeries because I had this droopy eye and they removed the tumor and I had brain surgery and it was quite complex. And unfortunately, there were some complications, which meant that I spent the next 2 years in and out of King's College Hospital to address some of the complications. I had a CSF leak, which is cerebral spinal fluid. I had it flowing out of my face. So I had many times where I was in hospital to have shunts put in and to try and take off the pressure off my brain. In any event, on one of those occasions, I was a patient and I had been in King's College for about 3 weeks in the late summer of last year. And I felt like something different to eat. So I wandered into the local high street and I saw a buffet style place and I went in there and I noticed they were cash only, which should have been my first red flag. I went outside to draw money and I went back into the restaurant to place my order and the gentleman and the manager said to me, please leave. There have been complaints about you. You're very scary and the customers don't like you. I looked around. There were 1 or 2 people gorging themselves at the buffet, so I don't know who complained, but he repeated the instruction for me to leave. So I left and I went into the local park in London, there in South London, and I had a bit of a weep and a cry. And then I returned to the ward and I told the matron who was fuming. She wrote to the restaurant and my wife came to my aid and she sat and consoled me and we worked on how we might respond. And the rest is history. The Metropolitan Police found out about it. They registered as a disability hate crime. A local media station and a newspaper came to me, the Southwark Times, and they took my story and from there it blew up. Suddenly I'm in BBC, on the news, TV, radio, Sky News, podcasts, and I've started an advocacy journey, and I have found my voice. I wasn't always this confident, but I've learned to tell my story, and I'm learning along the way. I've made lots of mistakes on social media, but I'm learning, and I'm finding my feet in this world of social media, and it's been an adventure. And I always tell people, just tell one person your story, because it's not everyone that has confidence and boldness. I certainly didn't. It all started with telling one person my story, and it's just blown up.
Yeah, I mean, and you're doing it fantastically well. I mean, you've really kind of shone a light on the condition, but more about our cultural attitudes towards people who are, don't look exactly like the norm. But the norm used to be, was it 2 adults, 2 kids, 2.4 kids? And it's, you had to have 2 cats and live in this, and there's all these kind of silly kind of stigmas, and that's the beauty of life, is people are different, we're unique. But did you ever feel pressure to stay strong? People said, oh, don't look at them, don't care what they think, just get on with your day. Before you kind of got into this, were you ever kind of pushed to stay silent and strong and ignore what people were thinking? How did you deal with that kind of, that people being arseholes in that sense?
Yeah, I think because I've had such a fantastically supportive and loving family, I truly believe from a young age that what other people thought is not my business. The old children's rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never harm me. Now, harder to do than to say. Those words are easy to say, but I truly do believe it. I honestly do believe it. I never felt pressure to stay strong, because I think staying strong is a good thing. I mean, we had days when I cried at home, and I asked my mom, why do I look like this? And why are people like that? And those were not weak moments. Those were normal human moments when we become overwhelmed with emotions. And it's okay to have a bit of a breakdown. There's nothing wrong with that. But then the next day you need to get up. My grandmother always said, look in the mirror, know who you are, and carry on. And you have to just keep showing up every day, and you have to keep pressing on, because you are setting an example for somebody else starting their journey, and you need to be a role model to them. So I did it for myself. I did it for my family, and because of my family, because of the love and support that they always showered me with.
I love that. I love that you're using it, because you're taking the strength from the advocacy. You're helping others, but you're also taking it as I'm going to use the strength of the community, the support and the love and the hope that they get from me as the strength for me to continue. It's really beautifully put. Did you find that there was this kind of, living with a sort of visible condition, that there was a need, almost like they were expecting you to be vulnerable? They expected you to have issue with, like, how you're fitting in and stuff like that, and for you to be in such a warm, supportive family and getting on with people, and it kind of people struggle with it.
I think it frustrates people when they see somebody successfully managing a significantly hard condition, because not to minimize other people's problems, but somebody with an invisible illness might feel that he shouldn't be so confident because he's got all those issues. I think it can be a stumbling block for some people. People do expect you to do badly in life, and it makes them feel superior when they see somebody else struggle. But I don't know. I'm just strong for my family. I'm strong for me, and I can't say that enough, that I don't now care what other people think about me, and not in an arrogant sense, but their opinions of me are theirs. It's their business. I no longer allow those thoughts to take root, to take hold, and to manifest into in the form of bitterness in my mind. I honestly don't. I don't have time for that. I've moved on.
I love your strength of character. It's that moment of, I'm living my best life. I don't care what you think. You can have your opinions, but I'm living the way I want to live. I love that. When you were at the point though of somebody was giving you a side eye on the tube, or somebody was being a bit of a jerk or whatever, did you utilize anything like box breathing, any other mantras? Did you have a fun game that you maybe played with family where it switched you away from that?
I would stare right back, make them feel a bit uncomfortable. Maybe that's immature. Sometimes I would lash out and I'd be quite angry, and I'd shout at a little child who was being just innocently curious. And I do regret that. But again, I'm only human. But I don't remember actively again practicing any mindfulness or any mantras. It catches you by surprise. You don't have time to think, okay, I now need to do A, B, C, or D.
Yeah, so I'm not running this protocol. I'm just dealing with it. Aye.
Yeah. And the problem is, right, we have as a society largely pathologized everything. Everything's got a condition. Everything's a name. And I think that's ridiculous. We should just accept some of these things as being a normal response to everyday pressures of life. I don't know why everything has to be a mantra or a pathology. It's absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. It's one of my bugbears in life, but there are people with genuine problems, and I accept. But I'm not too sure why everything has to have a label.
I think that's the thing into it, is we want to have a label. We want to have something wrong with us. We want to have a justification why we're not where we want to be in life. And if we can say, well, the man's holding me down, my health is holding me down, we can use that as an excuse not to be where we want. But was that the reason that made you become an advocate for people with visible disorders, or people who are treated differently, that you wanted to show people that they could live the life they wanted, not the life that people were treating them by?
Many years ago, I met Adam Pearson, the actor, who has now become a friend. And I always wanted to be like him, and I thought, I can't possibly be Adam Pearson. I don't have his voice, I don't have his charisma, I don't have his skill set. And I shelved that. Many years ago, I saw Adam, and I asked him for some advice, because I thought, I'd love to do acting, I'd love to be on TV, etc. Never for a moment did I think it might actually happen. And I perchance came across two fantastic charities after my restaurant incident, called Nerve Tumors UK and Changing Faces. And they approached me, and they told me about the world of advocacy. I didn't know that it existed. It gave name to something that I always wanted to do. So through those two charities, I've been able to learn more about advocacy, and I've decided this is something I would like to now spend the rest of my life doing, all because of that tiny incident in an insignificant part of South London. So it's amazing how life works out, that I ended up now doing my very first podcast with Adam Pearson. And it's amazing because he knew me all those years ago when I was an insignificant nobody, and I'm now hoping to build upon what I can see other people doing and learning from them, and not mimicking them, but obviously I'll do my own thing. But I've learned a lot from Adam and other people like him, and I'm excited for what's to come.
Well, I would argue that you were always somebody. You were never a nobody. You're always Oliver, the lovely guy. And I think that's the thing, is we get to the point where you kind of look at your negative parts of your life and go, I'm kind of glad for that. I mean, I had really bad depression. I've got intrusive thoughts. I've had really bad mental health over the years. And in a way, I'm glad for it, because it helped me create the podcast to help other people who are going through similar situations. In a way, are you almost happy for that event when you think back now?
It's the best thing that has happened to me in the last 2 years, because it's been a painful journey. Around the same time of that restaurant incident, I lost my father. So you'll see the video of me speaking to Sarah Jane on Sky News, retelling that incident. It was alive in front of millions of people, and I had just lost my father that week, so I had to be brave. I tell the story to you now because it's been a difficult 2 years, but that incident has really encouraged me. I've had messages from all over the world, lovely, lovely people supporting me, and it's been a really good thing. So I'm really grateful that it happened.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
It's something that it's when you think back into it, it's like when we see it at the time, you deal with the human emotions of anger, upset, anxiety, judgment, but now when we think back, you can kind of see the good for it. And I think that's what a lot of times we forget as men. We react to the emotions, and then we don't always go back and look at how that can affect us and that can heal us, that can change us. But what would you want people to remember about people who are visibly different or who are dealing with different conditions or stand out in any kind of way? What would you want them, like, what's something that you think everybody needs to remember?
So I like the new language of people like me. We no longer say disfigurement because that implies a negative, positive. What's the word? Positive anyway. So I like to use the word visible difference, and I'd like people to remember that we are just like them. We have the same hopes, dreams, fears about the future. Because we look different, it doesn't mean that we are different. And I'd like to know who is normal. Who decided one day?
I'm certainly not.
Who decided one day that a symmetrical face is the norm? And everything outside of that, everything other, is to be feared. For the longest time, and this is another bugbear of mine, Hollywood has villainized people that look different. Every Bond villain in history has a facial difference. What's that about? We need to start challenging the narrative, removing stigma, normalizing visible difference in society. So to answer your question very shortly, just remember we're just like them. Same dreams, same hopes, same fears for the future, and please treat us all with kindness because we are all just the same.
It's something to think about, isn't it? It's like that on TV films, the villains are normally the ones who have been burned or have a scar or some visibly difference. It's actually quite a scary way how Hollywood has defined, anybody that's even slightly different, not the unique character, but by what people perceive of them. There's a lot to sort of unpack there. But when you are...
Changing Faces, the charity that supports people that are visibly different in the UK, do an annual campaign, and the tagline is "I am not your villain," and it does try to challenge the narrative of people that look visibly different, and it's a really good thing. So there's a lot of good work being done at the moment around challenging that traditional narrative about having a visible difference.
Because I'll include all the kind of links to them and the campaigns and the amazing work that they do. But what was the inspiration to then go on to social media and TikTok and to then take your advocacy? Was it to share it to a wider audience, to let people who are coming up know about conditions and the resources that are available, rather than just being on TV?
Yeah, selfishly, I did it for myself. I also wanted a voice. I saw some of these fantastic advocates, and I'm a bit of a writer. I can pen things. My family and my wife have always encouraged me to do that. So I thought, why not, now that I have a voice, why don't I turn that around for good? And I did it for me. I started talking to the camera on my morning walks just for me, and it grew exponentially as I grew with confidence. I gained confidence. So I thought that I could do something good with my story. It's never been about me. One of the reasons I never named that restaurant was because I didn't want it ever to be about me, but I wanted to stand up for vulnerable, disenfranchised people with various conditions. So we took a longer approach to that story, and we thought, let's build upon that. And I now tell different stories. I don't want to be a person that keeps referring back to the restaurant incident. I want to talk about other things in my advocacy work. This is different on podcasts. I will always refer to that story because it's where I started. And I owe a great debt to that time in my life where the world discovered me, as it were. But it's sort of wanting to stand up and represent other people.
It's almost like you were destined to become this kind of figurehead or the focal point for people who were looking for a champion. You know, they were looking for that hero who would step up and say, nah, enough's enough. We want to make this change. But say we give you all the power just now. How would you want to change, like, the funding towards research? To what, you know, like, what would you want them to do to look for medical treatments, or to just have a better way of managing the conditions? Is there any research that you would want them to focus on?
I'm not particularly au fait with the current research into treatment, so my overarching message is to be kind and to accept people that look different. But I'd also like medical students to spend a lot more time when they're at university talking about rare conditions, not just mine. I attended a meeting in Parliament recently in London, in Westminster. That's another story. That was amazing. The Neurological Alliance brings together all these charities that represent people with different neurological conditions. There's not enough known about it, and we need to lobby government for more funds to support the various causes. And I think if a junior doctor, could spend more than a couple of hours learning about neurofibromatosis throughout their whole medical career, that could be a good thing. I've been to many GPs who do not know what neurofibromatosis is. I've had healthcare assistants not want to touch me because they think I'm contagious. That's not acceptable. And we need to now tell people to do better. Medical people, please do better.
Does that tie in? I had to write it down where you said your mantra was knowing better lets us do better. Do you think that's what they need to understand, is not just to look at it in a textbook, is to actually deal with patients and or focus on people and learn how to treat people as a person, not the condition?
It does. And when we know better, we do better applies not only to the treatment that I get from other people, but also to the medical fraternity. Literally, know better. Open a textbook, please. Learn a bit more about neurofibromatosis. Learn a bit more about people with epilepsy, because you're going to come across them one day in your practice, and you need to be prepared to deal with them holistically, not just treating the patient's symptoms, understanding the mental health struggles that they might be going through, understand what it's like to grow up in a beautifully aesthetically pleasing world when you look different. You need to understand, do better at treating people holistically.
So how would you change then? So you've still got all the power to change it. You know, you're funding research, you're telling them to work on it, you're teaching medical professionals to treat the person, or, you know, more of a personal approach rather than a medical approach in a way. What would you want legislation? What would you want the government to do to protect people, to ensure that, you know, that the police could actually deal with a restaurant that treats people like that, or, you know, people who assault people because they're different and things like that? What would you want to do to help people?
In practice, I think I would like to see the NHS legislated that they have to employ X amount of people with lived experience. At Guy's Hospital in London, I'd like to see 10 people perhaps with neurofibromatosis employed because of their condition. You may call that affirmative action, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it will help normalize my condition, where we see other people with my condition in professional roles. That's very important. To answer your other question, we need to enforce the restaurant industry to know more about the Equalities Act of 2010. Lots of research around how do we treat people that look different in our business. Make that a condition of of their license that they have to know what the Equalities Act of 2010 is. Do they know about visible difference, disability, hate crimes, for example? They do need to know if they're going to have a business in my town, that sort of thing. So these are some of the things that I've thought about generally, but I've not yet formed a concrete action plan in
I
terms of
like
what
it.
you're asking.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people, when you think about it, who know we're not allowed to treat people differently because of race, religion, sexuality, but people can't identify the acts. They can't identify the components of it. You know, that the fact that a restaurant could do that to you, a policeman could come along and say they broke the law, but there's nothing that they could do. Just seems silly. But you've turned that.
It is, and I didn't even know, and I should know this because I work for the National Health Service. I did not know that the Equality Act of 2010 protected or allowed for protections in terms of people that look different. And anyone contravening that act, such as the way that the restaurant acted, is in contravention of that act, and it is classed as a hate crime, a disability hate crime. So, knowledge is power, as the old adage says, and I'd like to see more work being done to promote the Equalities Act of 2010.
I think that's the next part of your advocacy. I mean, it's because we learn a lot about the condition, about, you know, you have a lot of guests on who have other conditions, and, you know, you promote all these different things, and you've turned a tragedy which could have crumbled some people into a triumph. You've made us realize that everybody's a person, and like you're saying, that we need better care, we need better support for people who are going through it, and we need to be more visual in showing that the world we're completely different. You know, but you're married, you're happy, you're sharing this out, your advocacy, you're helping people with your suicide helpline that you work at. How did you find that joy again after that? You know, because you said you were down in the dumps, you had an amazing wife who came in and supported you, your family brought you back. How did you turn that into happiness again for people who are struggling with depression, etc., or how they feel about themselves? Any tips to find that?
So I tell myself, okay, this has happened. Let's have a pity party. Allow yourself 6 hours to grieve. Move on. What are you going to do about it? You literally can't do anything about it, can you? What motivates me is an inner joy. It's my Christian faith. And there are 3 things I talk about on my morning walks, and these help to ground me and to help me carry on. And those are, we all need something to do. We all need a purpose and mission. That's my job, and now the new world of advocacy. We all need someone to love. I've got a beautiful wife who loves me. I love her, and a family. And we all need something to look forward to and to hope for. And I think we all need these 3 things. You know, hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. That's a proverb in the Old Testament. And basically what it means is, if you don't have any hope in your life, you're going to get sick. Depression is characterized by a sense of hopelessness, right? So in short, those 3 things are, we need something to do, our mission, we need somebody to love, and we need something to hope for. And that's where I get my joy from.
I love that. I love the way that you look at life. When you look back now, do you feel a sense of pride as much as peaceful about you've taken this event and you've turned it into this life-changing event for yourself, for tons of other people who are having similar experiences in their life? You're being this figurehead, you're educating people. Is there that sense of pride, or do you think you've still got so much more to do, that this mission you're on?
I've got so much more to do. The thing about social media, right, is we have this artificial sense of validation every time somebody likes, comments, posts on our various platforms. And it's a little fickle, but it's quite endearing as well. I was looking at my Instagram stats today, and I've had 300,000 views in the last month. I mean, I could not believe that, right? Just little old me, just going on my morning walks to work. It's amazing. I'm very grateful. I'm very not proud, but I'm very grateful that I'm the tool to be able to, or I'm the medium to be able to do all of this. It's great. So I'm very grateful.
You do an amazing job. I mean, honestly, when I see how you deal with the trolls, the inquisitive people, the support, you don't change at all. You don't snap at people. You're warm, you're friendly, you explain it, and you seem to just have this ability to connect people and make them understand and be to I don't know, just to break down that barrier and actually explain the situation and make them see people in a different light. And it's such a beautiful, amazing thing to do. You should be super proud of what you do. Something I did wonder though is you do that, you put yourself out there, you have a work on is it a suicide helpline that you deal with in the NHS?
The mental health crisis line, the NHS trust. Yeah.
How do you deal with the stress of that? Then the stress of putting yourself out there, then the stress of dealing with the trolls, dealing with going to the government, dealing with these interviews. How do you maintain yourself, your happiness, and what do you do away from it?
One day at a time, having a routine. I mean, I now wake up at 6 a.m. every morning and I go for a walk, and I'm trying to maintain that level of energy just because walking is really good for you, right? So even on a Saturday and Sunday, I'll just go for a quick walk around the block, maintain a routine. I think routine is so important for managing mental health and for navigating stressful lives. We all lead stressful lives. It's not always easy. At the moment, I'm quite overcome with tiredness because I'm doing far too much, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a good thing, but I do need to slow down a bit. I think one day at a time. That's all I can say. It will get better. I always say wildfires burn out. It doesn't last forever, your storm. So just one day at a time.
It's like that saying into, what is it? This too shall pass. That, you know, when you're happy, this will pass. When you're sad, this will pass. Nothing is ever constant. Things will always change and get better. And I think we sometimes make permanent decisions on a temporary feeling or belief. And I think that can be sort of terrifying about people. But what would you want us to remember then? People who come and see you, how can we be more inclusive, supportive? You know, if we learn more about the act, etc., how can we treat people like people?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, just be kind. I often say you do not know what context people are operating in. So I always use this example, and it's silly because I've done this. You're in the Morrison supermarket car parking lot, and a lady with 5 million screaming kids cuts you short, and she's flustered and she irritates you because she's cut you off, and you get irritated and you react. Stop to think what that lady's day has been like. Stop to think about the stress she's under. Maybe she's about to lose her house. Maybe she's about to get divorced. Maybe she's just lost her husband, and her kids are driving her up the tree or whatever. Be kind. We all have to be more kind. I end every day, every talk with just be kind. You do not know the pressures other people are under. You just see them for a moment, but you do not know what's happened just before that moment. Be kind. That's all I can say.
So if somebody does come out and says something and, you know, you get into that situation, what would you want a parent to say to their child? You know, what would you want them to say to somebody who maybe responds like aggressively and they don't mean it or something like that? How would you want somebody watching to deal with that situation and explain what's happening to their child, their friend, whoever it is?
Just remember, everyone is fighting battles. And yes, just because you can explain behavior doesn't mean that you can excuse it. But it does help to understand. Maybe take your little child aside and say, listen, my boy, the world's a hard place. Adults act up. They don't mean to. Perhaps he's under a lot of stress. Try and explain to them that the world is a hard place and we're all facing many different stresses. It does help. It does go a long way to explaining behaviors when you can understand. Children are amazing. If you just speak to them intelligently, they'll soon figure it out. They might even return with a smile and de-arm or disarm the situation. I think children, we can learn a great deal from them.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like with kids, it's what they learn. It's a lot of times they're happy. We have to teach them racism, sexism, and all that. If we let them just be natural, they all connect and love each other. And, there's no hatred. We have to create these stupid beliefs in them that a lot of people do, and it's really quite sad when you see what kids can become or from where they were. Have you noticed a difference in how society treats people, or how we value attractiveness, or what we see about people? Have you noticed any difference, especially since you've been doing this advocacy work?
I mean, I wonder if people are kind behind my back. So I've certainly had thousands of really kind comments, and people are curious. So if I'm walking through the supermarket, they glance and they're curious, and I don't think everyone is acting maliciously. I talk a lot about the Elephant Man. In Victorian Britain, Joseph Merrick, he was so-called the Elephant Man because he had a grotesquely disfiguring condition called the Proteus syndrome.
Yeah.
And the only way that Joseph Merrick could make money was to appear in what they used to refer to as freak shows. People would make money to go and look at people that looked different. And I hope that in 21st century Britain we have moved on. We're a bit more kinder than Victorian Britain. Somehow I have a few doubts that we are not kinder. I'd like to think that we are. But we need to start normalizing visible differences. The more people that rise to prominent positions in the media, we will see societal opinions change and narratives change. But it's going to take some work, and it's going to take some time.
I think you're definitely making a big difference in that. You started that debate, and you're going to these meetings and helping people by jumping on social media and explaining it. But what would you tell your younger version of yourself? What would you tell Oliver as the child, Oliver who has just gone through that restaurant episode? What now, when you look back at it, is there anything you would say to yourself differently?
I would tell him. Yeah, I would tell him, be kind. What other people think about you is none of your business. Just because you feel alone today, one day you'll speak to millions. One day you'll be a superhero. One day you'll stand up for people. One day you'll be able to turn your pain into purpose. So keep carrying on. You will be okay.
I mean, you've spoken to so many people. You've interviewed so many amazing guests, like just on your social media, your TikTok. What have you have you heard any sort of stories about people who have changed their views, or anybody who's been struggling with their appearance or dealing with a condition that has maybe changed their values or felt better by your interaction with them?
Every day I get comments such as, today you helped me get out of bed. Today you made a real difference in my life because I am suffering, I am struggling. And today you helped me understand why that man that I work with has these bumps on his skin. So it's really life affirming when I get comments like that, because it means that this mission matters and it's bearing fruit. It's going to take some time. I'm only at a couple of thousand followers. People that have been doing this a lot longer than me are on millions of followers. But that doesn't matter. We are all doing this collectively for the community, not just for ourselves as individual content creators. But I'm really encouraged when I get really kind messages like that.
Because something I did notice was there was a lot of people. I mean, at times, when I was explaining who you are and about the NF1, people are like, never heard of it. But I was really surprised the amount of people who were saying, I have this family member, I've been affected by it, etc. You mentioned, was it 1 in 2,000?
So it's roughly 1 in 2,500 to 3,500 people. That's the distribution in the UK. A country the size of the UK, I can't remember where we are now. Is it about 70 million? There's about 28,000 people with neurofibromatosis in the UK. And one of the doctors annoyed me recently when he said to me, it's not a rare illness, it's a common rare illness. I said, but please, sir, tell me why then. Nobody's ever heard about it. Nobody can say it or spell it or whatever the case is. But it is quite interesting to me. I agree that often they'll say, oh, I've got a sister with it. I've got a brother. I lost an aunt with it. It's interesting.
Because it was really surprising. I think it was on one of your last lives when I joined, and it was like, I have this, and it was literally like every third or fourth comment, people were saying, "I knew somebody with this," or "I have got it," or "It's affecting my breath," and I was kind of like, it's brilliant because it makes the world a smaller place. Yeah, we can order food and we can do all these kind of watch cat videos, but we can actually connect with people. Whereas maybe you felt alone and by yourself. Suddenly you're saying, come to me. We'll have this. We have a warm community that's accepting. We help people. Just that alone will probably save lives. Like people who are at their wit's end.
I hope. I wonder, just being a bit thinking about it rationally. I wonder whether the hashtags have something to do with it. I'm not sure, but the algorithm might join us together. But yeah, it's interesting.
So if somebody has, they felt scared, stared at, judged, it could be a facial tattoo, physical disfigurement, it could be a loss of a limb or whatever it is. What do you want them to hear from you right now about this? What would you want them to always remember going forward, that no matter how dark it gets, if they remember this one thing?
So one thing, look in the mirror every morning, do some self-talk, know who you are. You know that you're a champion. You know that you're a superhero. What other people think about you is not your business. Don't own their opinions of you. You are you, and you need to carry on and be confident in your own abilities. Yes, I get this. I get told a lot. It's easier to say than to do. I agree. You have to practice it. Do it for one day a month. You'll be amazed at the results.
So for people who are listening, which I hope's a lot, because you deserve a lot of respect, credit, and just focus for you to then go and do these amazing advocacy jobs and helping so many people. But what's a challenge you'd set people to be more inclusive, better at empathy, to just treat people better? Is there something you can think of that would make less shits in the world, basically?
Be kind and don't stay. Be kind and do not stay, because it's not helping. Try and not be. Try when you see somebody that looks different in the corner of your eye, just normalize. Treat them normally. Don't stare, because it's hard. It is difficult to be stared at constantly and to be reminded that you're different and all of these things. Be kind and don't stare.
And what's a thing that would surprise us about this? Because you talked about your hairy eyeball, for example, that you took the skin graft from your leg, so you have your hair grows on your eye, for example. And I thought that was really cool because not a lot of people know about skin grafts and stuff. What do you think people would know about it that's maybe surprising, funny, intriguing? What's something that people go, "Oh, wow, I wouldn't have thought that."
It's not contagious. Firstly, these neurofibromatosis is not contagious. And people like me have lots of surgeries. So when you're all enjoying your summer holidays, people like me are probably spending the time that they have away from work in a hospital, seeing doctors. They're not just taking a day off work for the sake of it. There's lots of medical care involved. We see lots of doctors. I've lost count of the number of surgeries that I've had, brain surgeries, tumor surgeries, back surgeries. I've lost count literally. So try and understand, yes, it's visibly different, but actually we have lots of medical stuff going on.
And what is it about musicals that appeals to you? You've said you're a big musical fan. What inspires you about musicals? What makes you laugh? What makes you smile about them? Why? What is it that makes you tick away from all of this?
Because it's the human condition, and it's human stories set to amazing music. So I've seen Les Miserables about 7 times. It tells the story of grace, of second chances, of the human condition, the broken human condition. Another favorite musical of mine, Fiddler on the Roof, tells the story of a Jewish family in what's now referred to as Ukraine, the persecution they found, but the joy and the love of the family and the backstories of community. And it's really life affirming. Music's life affirming. It's joyful. Last week, Bridget and I, my wife, we went to see Oliver Twist. I'd never seen Oliver Twist on the West End. That was amazing. And it's just happy and it's joyful. And you can sing along and it's life affirming.
Well, you seem to have this amazing relationship with your wife. You have this loving relationship. For people who are just hopelessly single like myself, what tips would you give us for meeting the right person for us? Because you seem to be destined for your wife. What would you say to people who are like, okay, I need to find my version of that? Any tips for us to find in this weird world out there?
I think for men, be confident, know who you are. I think confidence is very attractive to women. And be kind, be a gentleman, do all the old-fashioned, old-school things. Show up on time, buy flowers, be a gentleman, be a knight, be their rescuer, be their pursuer, whatever it is. Go old school. And but don't rush it. The right person will find you in the right time. If you're a person of faith, pray about it. You'll meet the right person, and don't overthink it.
I think my one got lost. She must be struggling to find me at the minute.
Well, I had this friend in South Africa, Stuart. If you're watching, he always said the DHL package is on the way, and it took about 10 years, but the DHL package eventually came.
I love it. I'll honestly, I have so much respect for you. I think you do amazing work. You're saving lives, you're changing lives, you're educating us, and I think you were destined for this. And in a way, it's almost a good thing that the restaurant, because it gave you that strength, that power to then go and say, enough's enough. I want to change this. And you've probably changed lives of people who will never say it to you, who have got them out, like you're saying, got them out of bed, helped them go for a job, helped them meet somebody by just you being you. And you should be amazingly proud of what you do. And it's the fact that you do that on a daily basis, like you're saying, with the chronic fatigue and things like that, it's amazing. But I would love to have you back on again. I mean, I know we're over our time now, but what would you want people to take from this interview as a sort of a message for it? Like, if that's all they remember from this interview, what would you want them to take?
So remember my 3 tips for life. Wake up every morning, have a purpose. We all need somebody to love, something to do, something to hope for. And my overarching message is to be kind, go through life with kindness and with love, and let's make the world a better place for people like me.
Love that. And how can we follow you on this journey? What's next for the Oliver brand? How are you going to continue the advocacy work? And how can we follow you on social media? I mean, are you thinking websites? Are you going to do TED Talks? Because you deserve it. But what are you going to do next?
My absolute goal. The TED Talk would be fantastic. For now, it's more and of the same. So on TikTok, I'm at Oliver Bromley from TV. And on Instagram, I'm at Bromley O. And my YouTube channel is Ollie, Ollie Bromley, on YouTube. Ollie Bromley.
Well, that's it for another week. And thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.